All right, folks. Hey, Alex Gertsburg here. Thanks for tuning in. We do not really have an episode here. We just have me talking, and I hope that's cool, and I appreciate you listening here. I've been thinking about a couple of things that I wanted to share with our listeners here because I think it's important. And specifically, I want to talk to everybody, but I specifically want to talk to those people in the audience who I guess would listen and consider this viewpoint. There are folks who are going to be on the left, I guess, of the political spectrum. They're going to agree with a lot of what I have to say. So I'm not really talking to you guys. Although I suspect that there's parts that you won't agree with, so maybe I am. But there's definitely going to be folks on the right side of the political spectrum who, on the far right side, no matter what I say, they're just not going to agree with anything here because they're on the sort of on the extreme. So I'm not talking to you guys either, okay? I'm talking about the folks that are in the middle, okay? The folks that consider opposing viewpoints. And I'd like to think that that is most of the people that I interact with on a daily basis. One of the things that has been really surprising to me about Trump, for sure, the protests, George Floyd, is that there are people that I really respect, people that are close friends of mine, business associates, clients, people that are that I consider to be really intelligent people who can look at the same facts as me about our president, about the recent events, and just reach completely different conclusions. And I'm trying to understand how we can have such differing viewpoints about the same facts. And I've really been reflecting on this a lot lately. So much so that I thought it might make sense to talk about it here. A man died with a police officer's knee in his neck for 8.5 minutes while he pleaded for his life. That is something that everyone in America should be outraged about. If you're not outraged by that, there's nothing I'm going to be able to say to change your mind. Forget about the political implications of it all. Forget about what that means for Black America for a second, or for the left or the right, or for the elections. Forget about that. A man was suffocated to death by a police officer on camera while 3 other police officers either looked the other way or watched, did nothing to help, or stood in the way of other people trying to protect that dying man. If that doesn't outrage you viscerally, if that doesn't affect you on a visceral, emotional, gut-wrenching level, I don't really think we have anything to talk about. But I do think that most of America is outraged by that. Certainly the folks that are protesting. And I would say most of the people that I know. And I'm guessing most of the people that are listening to this right now. So let's just focus on that for just a few seconds. That's something that I think we can all agree on. There are definitely people out there who are convinced that the camera is fooling us, that this person had some reason to be choked out, or that George had a criminal record, or that the police officers felt threatened, or whatever. I'm not talking to those guys, all right? Those guys I just don't think that there's anything that we have to talk about. But for the rest of the people listening to this and watching this, we can all agree that that is an outrageous piece of police brutality, and that no person, black, white, Asian, anyone, should have to suffer that way. I think we can all agree on that. I think we can all agree also, gosh, I hope we can agree, that that type of misconduct does in fact happen disproportionately to black people over every other minority and majority group, and to poor people more than it does to people who are not poor. Okay? I think that we can agree on that too. Okay? I think that we can also agree that not all police officers commit acts of police brutality. I agree with that. Almost everybody I know will agree with that. Not all police officers are bad people. In fact, I would go as far as to say that hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of police officers are genuinely good people who got into the business of police work to do good and to administer justice and to protect and serve. I would venture to say that that a lot of police officers are there to do good. Okay. And by the way, to those police officers, I really thank you. You guys are doing yeoman's work, and it's work that is tremendously stressful. So hopefully we can all agree that not all police officers commit acts of police brutality. I think we can also agree that not all police officers look the other way when they see acts of police brutality occurring. I hope that we can all agree that there is a subsection of police officers who are racist, who do commit acts of police brutality, and who do look the other way when it happens. I hope that we can all agree on that. That is not a stretch. That is a fact. And I hope that we can agree that for those police officers, we have a problem. Okay, we have a problem. They should not be policing. They should be retrained, or they should find another line of work. Okay? I hope we can also all agree, after I drink this glass of water, that not all protesters are rioters, and that not all protesters commit violence and vandalism. I hope that we can all agree that most people who have been protesting for the last 2 weeks have been doing so peacefully and have been exercising an incredibly important right in the Bill of Rights. The first, I'm not going to shy away from this. I'm a First Amendment freak. Okay. I don't think there are too many things worse than the government or anyone else telling somebody to shut up or to protest at a different time or at a different place, or not protest at all, or protest in the way that I think you should protest. Protesting is good. Speaking your mind is good. Even if I don't agree with you, I can't remember who said this, but I believe it, that we should all, as Americans, fight to our death for the right of people to peacefully protest, even if we don't agree with them. When the KKK was in town in Cleveland, I was the first one to stand up and say, let them assemble and walk and say whatever they want to say. I don't have to agree with them, but they have the unfettered right, nearly unfettered right, to say whatever they want to say with almost no restrictions, right? There are certain time, place, and manner restrictions. There are certain forums that are traditional public forums, non-traditional public forums, limited public forums. There are non-public forums, private property or non-public forums, right? But when protesters get together, submit a petition or an application to use a public space to assemble and have a peaceful protest, we cannot, in America, let a handful of assholes who are rioting, who are committing acts of vandalism, who are committing acts of violence to derail the message, dilute the message, or to discourage the peaceful protesters from exercising their First Amendment right. We cannot do that, not in this country. I will tell you that is exactly what's happening, right? Regardless of how you feel about George Floyd, about the police department, about Donald Trump, about what the government is doing with respect to institutionalized racism or police misconduct, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. You are an American and you should be 100% in favor of people's right to protest peacefully. Okay? I can go back hundreds of years, thousands of years, actually. If you want to talk about religious leaders, you can go back to the times of Jesus and Moses and Muhammad or anybody else and go and work your way to the present and find countless examples of people who had something to say and got together, and had they gone home when their fellow citizens or the government or anyone said, hey, this isn't a good time. This isn't a good time to protest. This isn't a good place to do it either. There's people over there rioting. Don't say what you have to say. Don't do it right here, right now. Wait till later. Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, every one of the founding fathers, Susan B. Anthony, Gloria Steinem. If all of them or any of them had said, hey, you're right, this isn't a good time to protest, I'll do it on a different day, we would be a backwater. We would be a completely different kind of country than we are today. So say what you have to say. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't protest. There was a kid here, 15-year-old kid from Kenston, Chase Tuller, who wanted to have a protest last Tuesday. And it was shortly after there was rioting in downtown Cleveland. And he put up a Facebook post and he said, I want to go to Riverside Park and I want to have a protest. And the community, not the entire community, but parts of this community came down on him like a ton of bricks. And it's my understanding that he was bullied and harassed. And I saw some of this, although I didn't see the overt harassment and bullying. I saw it very subtly on Facebook. But I understand that it happened in a much more vicious way, where people were telling him, you better not have this protest here. Do not bring that element to Chagrin Falls. Do it a different day. Do it a different time. Let things cool down. And Chase Tuller, who's a 15-year-old kid, canceled the protest. And I don't begrudge him for that, right? I think his heart was in the right place. And I think there's only so much pressure and there's only so much stress that any 15-year-old kid should have to endure. But nor do I begrudge the people around him who were afraid. I think just as I have a nearly unfettered right to protest, you have the nearly unfettered right to be afraid. Don't go. Don't go to the protest, but don't tell Chase or anybody else that they can't or that this isn't a good time. Look, tell them, I guess. That's your right too, but it's just not right. It's not who we are. And so Chase canceled, and guess what happened? Protest happened anyway. And it was peaceful, and there were probably 100, 150, mostly young people there, but people from all over the community, and it was beautiful. And you know what else? 2 days later, there was another protest, and it was a much bigger one, and that one was sanctioned by Black Lives Matter, and they brought thousands of people into Chagrin, and that was a peaceful protest too. My suspicion is that what would have been a small protest on Tuesday became a much bigger series of protests over 2 days because people were saying, not here, not now. There is a pressure cooker that grows in pressure when you try to tamp it down, when you try to put a ceiling on it. That's exactly what happened. Our windows were boarded up on Main Street here for a good couple of days, and a lot of people were commiserating with the business owners and trying to understand and empathize and help them. And I am right there. I'm a business lawyer. This is a business law firm. Almost all of our clients are businesses and business owners. I understand that fear, and I don't judge you, and I don't begrudge anyone for having fear. You put your life into your business. You want to board up your windows, board up your windows. You will get no judgment or complaint from me, but do not tell a 15-year-old kid not to protest, and do not tell our neighbors here in Chagrin Falls, black people, liberal people, conservative people, anyone, that you shouldn't come here to say what you have to say. You should save your outrage for a different day, for a different time, for a different place. So I'm glad that those happened. I'm glad that they happened peacefully. And I would say to Chase and to Black Lives Matter and to anyone who has anything to say it. You live in America. You live here, and hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people died for your right to say what you want to say. I served in the military. I went to Iraq. I spent a lot of time over there. People that I went over there spent a lot more time than I did, and a lot of them got hurt. We all joined because we believe that America is an idea more than just a place on the map. It's an idea that says that you actually can say whatever you want to say, when you want to say it, where you want to say it. There are rules in place for how you can do it. Follow those rules. Don't be violent. Don't be an asshole. Don't vandalize, but say whatever you want to say. All right. The other thing too, I wanted to mention, right? You go on Facebook, which I got to stop doing because it's just making me crazy. There was a lot more, I'm totally convinced that there was a lot more agreement about what the center is in America before a news channel over here and a news channel over here and some extremists on each side started to demonize and label the other side. All right. So it is so easy to hold on to and take extreme positions when you've got the left on the other side or the right on the other side. It's so easy for some folks over here to say there are a lot of racists on the right wing, and it's so easy for a lot of folks over here to say the left wants to come for my guns. The left wants to not only defund the police, but abolish it and let lawlessness rage in this purge that is going to happen as soon as you put them in charge. I'm convinced that the center was bigger once. The center was more reasonable once. And we've become so polarized, and it's not divorced from the fact that we are being bombarded by extreme positions in all-day talk shows and cable networks and radio shows. I'm convinced of it. There are reasonable people who would take more reasonable positions if they weren't just constantly bombarded by like extremists on each side. I don't know. That's what I believe. So I'm talking to the friends that I have and the members of my audience and anyone who I don't know who is hearing the sound of my voice and is wondering, as I do we all really disagree this much? I don't think so. I think that there's a lot more that we agree on than we don't agree on. And I think that so long as people feel the need to say, don't protest here because riots will happen. So long as people feel the need to say, wait, all lives matter, not just black lives. Yeah, I know. I get it. We all agree. No one over here is saying only black lives matter, right? No one over here is saying white lives don't matter. That's a talking point. The what about all lives matter is a talking point. I feel like the people who are saying that aren't hearing these guys over here. They're not saying just black lives matter. They're saying black lives matter because black people are getting killed on camera for 8.5 minutes by racist cops who suffocate them to death while 3 other cops are looking the other way. Black lives matter. That George Floyd's life mattered. And every black kid and Tamir Rice's life mattered, right? Nobody's saying only Tamir Rice's life mattered. Nobody is saying only black lives matter. But black lives are getting snuffed out at a much higher rate and on camera. And so we don't have to take extreme positions, not folks on this side and not folks on this side. Think about what we agree on. There's a lot more there that we do than that we don't. And I implore folks across the political spectrum to stop repeating talking points, to stop, I don't know, to not just take Tucker Carlson's words as gospel. It is okay to question the talking heads on cable. It is okay to be outraged when you see outrageous conduct. You don't have to take a defensive position, and you don't have to paint the other side into an extreme position. I appreciate that you guys have listened for as long as I've been talking. I hope that you will work with me and work with each other in calling out bullshit from the bad cops, from the bad politicians, from the cable news networks, from people that would paint you into an extreme position. Call out bullshit. And if we can focus on the things that we agree on, I'm sure as I look through the progress of history and I think about the forward movement of civil rights, of the place where we are today relative to where we were 40 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago. We will get together to a place that I believe when we look back on 2020, a lot of us are going to be ashamed of ourselves. A lot of us are going to be wondering, what planet were we on when we did nothing? When we were complaining about appropriate places to protest, appropriate times to protest. I think that our kids and our grandkids are going to be watching these videos of black people being killed in the streets, Philando Castile being murdered by a cop in his car for doing nothing wrong in front of his wife and his kid in the back seat. And they're going to be looking at the wide disparity between how black people are treated relative to how white people are treated by law enforcement. And they're going to look back at this time as a step that was backwards when looking at it in hindsight, but it was a step on the road to a more just society and a freer society and in a more equal society, because that's the way history has gone and that's the way it's going to go. And I think at that point, we all are going to be thinking about what side of the fence we were on and whether we were taking extreme positions or not, or whether instead we were all agreeing on the things that deep down inside I know that we all agree on. So, we will get there. I'm certain that we will get there. I appreciate you listening as long as you have, and thank you. Be well.